So what are the documents that precede the project schedule?
There are many documents that precede the project schedule or the initial project schedule. First of all, you're going to have your project charter. You're going to have your project management plan. You're going to have... All right, let's start over. There are many documents that precede the project schedule, although I would suggest that you want to begin working on the project schedule in a rudimentary form really as soon as you have your project charter done. It won't be any sort of useful form, probably until you're done with your project management plan and you're going, but at the very beginning you're going to be in a startup phase and you're going to be in an outline phase, and it's important to have an understanding of what your goals are in meeting that. So start with your project charter, make sure that you've got a schedule that gets you to the next step. Then after the project management plan, you go into the baseline phase. At that point in time, you will have had your business requirement document in some form. You'll have a solution architecture outline if necessary. All of that will be in place to allow you to fully flush out a schedule that you can go into as exec and present.
What are the conditions of creating a project schedule? How do you know when you should start?
So the question is, when should you start creating a project schedule, or what are the conditions that are created for a project schedule? I will posit that there are three primary things that you do as a project manager, or at least that you are responsible for. That's scope, schedule, and budget. So as soon as you have an idea of what the project is, what the precursors are for it, which is really the project charter, at that point in time you need to be building out a project schedule. If you don't begin building out a project schedule at that point in time, what's going to happen is you're going to leak time all over the place because you'll be waiting for a plane to come or a train to go or something to occur if you're not actually driving it. So create your project schedule at the same time that you have your project charter, and it will be revised because it's a living document.
How does the project manager obtain the task information for the project schedule?
There are a lot of different ways a project manager obtains the task information in order to create a project schedule. Probably the most significant one is going to be through the leads in the division. And when I talk about leads, what I'm really talking about are the different people in QA, in development, in business analysis, in the different groups. The project manager isn't ever going to say, here are the 5 things that need to be done by this group. You're going to work through your leads or through the assigned resources to outline what those specific tasks are. And then from there, you'll go on to flesh it out. So you want to know what the tasks are first, and that's going to go into your project schedule. Then you're going to want to say, okay, what's the estimate of duration on all these individual tasks? And you put that in there. So you got to, feed the hippo takes 10 hours. And then you're going to ask the question, okay, well, when can you feed the hippo? And that's really the allocation. And they're going to say, well, I can feed the hippo 1 hour a day. So if you have a feed the hippo task and it takes 10 hours and they can do it 1 hour a day, it's going to take you 10 days to really feed that hippo. And those are really the primary components of building these things out. Then you're going to ask yourself, is this dependent on anything? And the dependencies are a critical part of the project schedule. And I will say that the dependencies are the responsibility of the leads and the working together of the different leads. Because if I'm in development, I may not know all of the infrastructure things that have to happen before I could do my piece, or vice versa. So once I have all my tasks lined out, I'm going to work with all the different people to figure out what their tasks are, understand them, to note where we have dependencies within that. So before you feed the hippo, someone's going to have to deliver you some wheat to feed the hippo. That's going to be a dependency. I way over answered your question, but I was trying to anticipate several things. You could just chunk that up.
Yeah, no, that's great. Let's see, I had a question about...
And I love hippos. Who doesn't though, right?
Right, start.
People who've been killed by hippos.
Yeah. Which task informations are most critical to include in the project schedule?
The question's really around what task information is most critical to include in the project schedule. I'll answer that by saying that it depends. As a general rule, what I want from people are digestible chunks of tasks. So I don't generally want tasks that are going to exceed 5 days in duration because I want to be able to monitor at a regular rate. I also don't want, as a project manager, to be scheduled to be noting tasks that are 2 hours to bring up the computer, 1 hour to install the whatever card. You want it at a level that is appropriate for you to monitor and control, but not to micromanage the team. So it's incredibly important that you work with that. There will be circumstances where things go off the rails, where 5 days is too much. You're going to need to monitor on a day-over-day basis because of the criticality of the tasks, or frankly, the people that you're working with. And there will be other circumstances where you could give someone a 10-day task, or you wouldn't give it to them. They could give you a 10-day task, and you'd be perfectly okay with that because they've established a pattern of delivery and excellence. So chunk your tasks into 5-day tasks as a general rule. If they're shorter but necessary, go ahead and monitor those as well. Don't micromanage the people, but be aware who the people are in setting the tasks. And once again, I keep saying setting the task. You're deriving the task from the people, so help them get to that level. That was awful. Do you want me to try that again? I was off in space.
No.
Okay.
I think that was good. Yeah. How do project managers use the project schedule?
Project managers use a project schedule as an explorer would use a map. Without a project schedule, the project manager can't effectively navigate from point A to point B. They would have no idea of what's going on or when it's going on, when it's supposed to occur. It is critical that they have a project schedule in some form in order to get the project done. You can't be a project manager if you don't have a project schedule. You could just be a note taker, or just a terrible project manager who gets paid too much.
What are some issues that might come up during status update reports?
Issues that might come up in status update reports. A project manager needs to know his audience and be sensitive to what's going on. In a highly functioning, safe team, project status reports, let me stop there. What do you mean? Are you talking about schedule status? Or are you talking about some other type of status?
No, just like updates. When I asked Mia, how do you get the updates on what's
Got
going
it.
on?
So what's the question again?
What are issues that might come up during status update reports or meetings?
So the question is, what are different issues that may come up in project status update reports or meetings? There's a lot of different ways that you could get updates to the project schedule. Sometimes you will create a common schedule that people could update, and then you meet less regularly. Sometimes you'll want to have regular meetings with the team where you ask them, where are you with line number 7, and they'll give you the information about line number 7. The most critical things to take into consideration are that nobody likes to not deliver. And you really need to create an environment where it's safe to give status updates that are realistic and honest. Instead of creating an environment where you are pressuring people to make up dates, to make up delivery timeframes, because they need to please the project manager or please the schedule. As soon as it becomes about the schedule and not about the end product, then you're going to begin losing people. And so being very mindful of the different people, what their different needs are in giving these updates and how they do their work is absolutely critical. I've seen more projects go wrong because they didn't take in the human factor in getting the schedule updates. For me, I love an environment where I have a once a week status report and I've got the leads in there and we just grind through. We're like number 7, number 8, where are we at with that? How does that impact the timeline? Let's move forward. But not all teams are created equal and not everyone is comfortable doing that, so people should be aware.
So you mentioned having an environment where people don't feel safe about letting the project manager know that they didn't meet the expectations. Would there be a situation where you might come in and you take over a situation like that? And
Say that again?
so you mentioned having there being a situation where team members aren't comfortable
Yeah.
notifying the project manager that they didn't meet expectations for
Right.
the date. Would there be a situation where for instance, that project manager leaves and another project manager comes in?
Yeah.
to-
Absolutely.
Okay.
Or
So-
where that person who was uncomfortable leads and another person comes in.
Okay, and how would you, if you were the project manager who comes in to take over that team where there's a weird dynamic, how would you fix that?
The question really is around if there's a project in trouble and there's some need to replace the project manager and the team feels unsafe or we're not getting very clear communications. The very first thing that I would do is I would get back with that team, or at least the leads of that team, reset on what is the purpose of this project and does everyone understand it? What are the big issues that are causing anxiety or worry about the project, and does everyone have a common understanding? And what can we do about those issues? I would take it at a high level. What is the project? What's going on? How do we resolve the issues? Before we got down to the lower level of, hey, Eddie, how come you haven't developed this yet? Is it because you're not competent? That's not the level that you want to go to. You want to make sure it's a safe place for the team to be very honest with you, because what's going to happen is you're going to find out that there's really either a lot of things that are missing from the project schedule, dependencies that are wrong on the project schedule, or that people just didn't meet their dates or couldn't meet their dates because of other reasons. And once again, it goes back to safety. People need to feel valued and safe while executing a project.
And that's on the level of project manager. What are some issues that might come up during status update meetings for a project coordinator?
So I would say that if we're talking about the difference between a project coordinator, maybe a project manager 1 and a project manager 2, in getting updates for that, most of the time a project coordinator is going to be less sophisticated in dealing with a large group of people, and they're going to be far more focused on the individual tasks and have we updated it? If not, when can we update it? And they'll also probably be a lot loosey-goosey about, oh, well, you didn't get that done. Okay, tell me when you might be able to get it done if you want to. Whereas project manager 1, I would expect that they could independently execute on a medium-sized project. And they're going to not only be asking the questions about the task, but they're going to be reading the room. And they're going to have an understanding of what's really going on while the status updates are occurring, where people have anxiety, and putting a pause to things and saying, okay, maybe we need to explore this a little bit further, because they will have gone through these circumstances many times. A project manager 2, I would expect, will have gone through all of these things many times and have a very good political sense for the room, knowing how to guide them to where they need to be, in addition to just asking for dates and numbers. Create an environment where it is it's safe and it's expected that people speak freely and are able to give unpleasant truths, or pleasant ones, but pleasant ones are easy.
So you said that the way that you mentioned the expectations of a project coordinator seemed like you weren't too happy about that. What would be like the ideal expectation for a project coordinator for you in a status update reports?
The ideal expectation of a project coordinator, as far as status reports and getting that information, is someone who has a core competency in the tool that we're using, whether it's Smartsheets or whether it's Microsoft Project. And their job is to go in and to have an understanding of the individual items and to lead the team through some truth for where we're at with items and how to resolve problems. I don't expect that they have a high level of political sophistication in going through all of the other things that are unsaid.
Okay, great. All right, next section.
Hold on a second, let's make this 2 videos.